Hey everybody, Andy here, helping you build a career you love. Thanks for joining me today. Got a lesson on job searching and how to be congruent across what you're doing and consistent in your efforts. So, hope you're here with me live, but if you're not watching this on the recording, welcome to you. If you are here with me live, get in the chat, say hi. Let me know who you are. Let me know what you do, what you need, where you're from, what time it is, wherever you're watching. Put some question marks in front of your questions. I got a kind of a wild one today. I'm going to tell you what we've got coming. It is going to be about job searching and some things that I notice that really add a lot of drag to your job search. I want to talk for just a quick couple of minutes to kind of tee up what we're going to do. And then I actually am going to play about a 20-minute segment, which is a clip from inside one of my premium job search programs called my Job Search Coaching Program. You might also know it as the Boot Camp. And from one of the monthly coaching sessions that I have with that group on job search congruence. So I'm going to play that. There's going to be some lesson inside that recording, and then I'm going to come back live with you, and I've got some additional lessons on top of the recording, and then we'll go into the Q&A. But here's the big problem that I see a lot of people facing. Their goals and what they want and what the type of job or the type of career that they're hoping to find, or the right company they're trying to get, to try to get the job with, and what it is they desire is incongruent with the way in which they put their resume together and market themselves and network. And then ultimately, if they do get a job interview, what happens is a lot of times the interviewer or the employer is asking you clarifying questions about what you want or what you do or what you've solved, and there's an inconsistency. And if you are in a job interview where you tend to be clarifying a lot, that is a bad sign, because the more time you spend clarifying things, explaining things, giving the employer a more clear picture of you, the less time it is that you're actually selling yourself on what you do well. And an interview, I want you to think of an interview, I know they may be painful, they may not appear to you like this, but an interview technically should be nothing more than a confirmation of what the employer is expecting to find out about you, or just confirm based on what they know of you through your resume or whatever referral or whatever insight that you've shared with a screener. So if that's not the case, there's a good chance that there's an incongruence between your goals, the marketing of yourself, and your interview stories. So I'm going to play a clip where I talk about this concept with my boot campers. This is a clip from middle of 2020, so more than a year ago. I was explaining this issue to them. This issue's probably been prevalent for all time. It's becoming more and more prevalent, and you're at a great risk of doing this, especially if you are doing any kind of career pivot, any kind of career change, and also individuals who are coming out of college who are looking for their first job. This is really important. The other thing, even if you're not career pivoting, but you are a senior person with a lot of different skills. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with individuals where it's difficult to recognize what their bread and butter is. And I should be able to do that within 1 second by looking at a resume. And sometimes I'm spending 30 minutes with a person asking questions to figure out what it is they do. If this sounds like you, this lesson is especially for you. But I think this is going to be a good reminder for everybody. So I'm going to get into the clip, then I'm going to come back. So it's about 21 minutes long. I'm going to come back, and it is also an extension of, if you're here with me live, today is on a Wednesday, it's October 13th. You might be watching this on a recording. But on Tuesday, October 12th, I also put a video out on a career tool that is great for your resume and your interviewing stories, collecting the data to help with this congruence. It's called my Career Achievements Journal. Hopefully you saw the video yesterday and you grabbed the free download, but this entire week is aimed at helping you with this. So let's get into the clip, and I'll be chiming in with you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm sitting right here drinking my tea as I watch me and you watch me, and let's have a chat together. Here we go. I have noticed, I've always known this, but I've noticed it's been more rampant with a lot of the questions that I've been getting, some of the difficulties people have been having, and it's been especially prevalent in the one-on-one coaching sessions where I'm helping you guys. And what I've noticed is that there is a disconnect in your histories, in the way you market yourself, in the stories that you get ready to tell in your interviews, and there needs to be a continuity. And so inside the boot camp and everything that I give you guys, there is a why I want you to do what I want you to do. There is what I want you to do specifically that's going to give you the best results. And then there's the how exactly to do it. Do it this way, write it this way, use this kind of template, follow up this way, and all that good stuff. But what I've also noticed is that, smart as y'all are, you look at what you can do and what you think you should do, and then you take the tactics and then you try to implement something, or you try to write a resume, then you want to figure out how you want to tell your stories and all that good stuff, and you use the mechanics of what's in there. But occasionally what happens is there's a disconnect where there's not the consistency and continuity across the different activities that you need to do in order to give you that level of oomph, the power, just the instant clicking and all that good stuff for finding where you want to go, and not only then targeting that right place, but then once you get the opportunity on the line, hitting a home run. So I tried to think of, is there a different way I can explain this to you? Because I don't want to just repeat the stuff I've already recorded for you in the program. And I want to try to draw an analogy of something that I think will apply to your entire life, and it applies to the way you and I've connected. So I wanted to give you something close to home. So here's what I came up with. I don't know if you know this. I don't know that I've ever really said this to you, but there is a little formula that I have been using to guide myself and my team and what we do at the Mile Walk Academy. And this is now 5 years old. Okay. And I'm a big believer that success in anything, any of you, the trades that you're in, as long as you've been doing what you've been doing, and even if you want to make a career change, doesn't really make any difference, that success does not happen overnight. And people who work hard consistently over time get there. The experience you gain, what you're able to do with the experience, you knock one domino down, you hit another one, and so on. You keep climbing and all that good stuff. And nothing ever happens instantaneously. And in any kind of activity that you do that requires a lot of moving parts, like a job search, it doesn't happen simultaneously. But some of you think it does, based on the questions and the approach you're taking and the questions you're asking me. So I wanted to be really clear about what I meant. So here's how I approach you guys, okay? If you see this card, I feel like if I create the right stuff and I am consistent in the way in which I distribute it, meaning on an ongoing basis, that I will become discovered. This is it. This is the whole formula for everything that I do, okay? Starting back in July of 2015. This is it. You create something, you consistently make it available, and you become discovered. There's other analogies I can use, but basically this is it. And so I always feel like I have to create the kind of stuff that you need in order to be successful and to attract you to me, but I have to be available and continually put it out there. The YouTube videos, the weekly live shows, the Tuesday digests that I give you, the monthly boot camp sessions, all of that good stuff. There's a level of consistency in which it's delivered. Over time, the more of that you do, then you become discovered, right? Anybody who's ever become a major singer, artist, actor, whatever, it did not happen overnight, right? You think about, wow, where'd they come from? They came out of nowhere. They didn't come out of nowhere. They kept creating. They were consistent, right? They practiced every day. They consistently distributed whatever it was. They consistently tried to target agents, whatever it was that they do. That's what this is about. But there's one really important thing you need to take away from this, because believe me, we're going to walk through you here in a second. The creation of what goes out into the world, it's not just that I can create, because there's a lot of things I could have created for you. I decided that I wanted to create solutions that answered your problems. Now, let's just say, sake of argument, that I wanted to start talking about goal setting and planning and organization and leadership stuff. And I just kept creating that. Now, I could have just kept creating that, and you would not have discovered me, likely because you didn't have that didn't solve an issue you needed. You found me, I'm assuming virtually all of you found me, because you had a job searching problem, a resume writing problem, an interviewing problem, a salary negotiation problem, or something like that. So I had to determine what your issues were so that when I created something, I was solving your problem. Okay? That's what drew you to me. Now, my ability to continually put it out there into the world over and over and over again. Some of you found me years ago. Some of you found me last month. Some of you found me last week, right? That level of consistency in the delivering of my messaging that solved your problem is what ultimately led to your ability to discover me. But then you discovered me. Now, how's that look? Well, the source of the creation and the things, and I want you to think about your lives here, and I will connect these dots for you. The source of the creation was all centered on your problems, not my problems, and not what I wanted to teach. I focused on the members of the Mile Academy, the potential students, so to speak, the people who needed my help. What was their problem, right? People's acute problems drive them to make more change and immediate improvement and engage in the help more so than their long-term aspirations. It's true. Okay, so I focused on that. Now, I created what I felt were my resolutions, but where did these resolutions come from? Okay, they came from my experience. Now, I want you to pause for a second, because here's where we're going to start to get into the exercise. When you think about me, you and me, why are we here together? You chose me. You did. You chose me, right? You had problems. How many career coaches are out there that you were able to find before you actually enrolled in the job search bootcamp? Probably a lot. Probably at least a handful, right? However, wherever. A lot of you in your stories, you told me I hired resume writers, I had outplacement services, I tried other coaching programs, which made me reluctant to buy yours, but I did anyway, and so on, right? Why did you do that? You chose me for a reason. What did you do? You hired me. Why did you hire me as opposed to somebody else? Now, remember the stories that you guys wrote? A bunch of y'all wrote, dozens and dozens and dozens of you wrote them. And you probably didn't think, here's why I hired you. Have you given one thought to, as you were expressing that? Now, whether you wrote to me and told me, or whether you just know off the top of your head why you chose me, have you ever stopped to think for 1 minute, if I chose him because of this list, I hired him for these reasons. I want you to stop and think, are you actually considering yourself, marketing yourself, and telling your stories about yourself that are demonstrating to people that they should hire you for those same reasons you hired me? It's the first place. Just step back for a second. Now, jot yourself a note right now. Don't do it right now. Jot yourself a note. Even those of you that shared with me, I know exactly why you hired me, because y'all told me, right? There's a consistency. Well, your stories were backed by evidence. Your stories were from your life and your evidence, and you lived through it, and you knew how to make a career change. You knew how to find a job. Oh, you studied the people in the boot camp and all those success stories that you showed me and explained to me. Wait, you put it in terms I can understand. You solved my problem that I couldn't seem to understand until I heard you say it. Like and you instill confidence in me. You make me feel good. You make me feel like you're going to take care of me. All of those things that you guys all listed, are you doing that? Like, you ultimately need to do that in a job interview, okay? Because you want somebody to hire you. So it's my packaging. It's the way I make you feel. But those stories came from somewhere. But it started with your problems, not what I wanted to teach. Okay. So I want you to just jot down why I hired Andy, whatever, in a list. And then I want you to think about as the starting point of what you need to build upon, because ultimately you need to get to a spot where you are marketing yourself to an employer who has the problems that you can solve. Okay. Now I'm going to show you how I want you to do that. But I need you to understand this. Think about this. Have you ever stopped to think about that? The reasons you hired me as your coach, the reasons you paid your $500 or whatever you paid, these are the same reasons that somebody's going to hire you for a job. Okay? So that's the first thing. And this card, we're coming back to my creation card. Now, when you think about you, the creation, all right? You want to think about the problems that the employers have. But look at what's your creation really? Let's make this analogy. Okay, I know this. I'm hopefully I don't drop this stuff. But your creation really, your resume and the stories that go on your resume, your cover letters, right? That's your creation. And the stories you tell in a job interview. This is your creation. This is all your creation. Okay? Your consistency in bringing it to the market is the job search challenge. We're going to talk a little bit about this today too. But this is how you consistently bring forward your stories. Okay? And then what's your discovery? Your discovery are interviews and job opportunities, right? Employers are going to discover you. Now, I want you to think about something. Here's the difference. I create a job search bootcamp program. And if I wanted to, I could have just put the Mile Walk Academy website out, put the job search bootcamp card there, right? Guess how many of you would have bought it? Can we say 0, none, 1? Nobody is just going to find me because I have a website and they Google something and then they look and they see there's a program and just goes and buys it. I got news for you guys. If you think I'm filthy rich because I got a website with a bunch of cards on it, nobody buys stuff because of that. Okay, I'm not embarrassed to say that. That's the way the world works. This is a tall business, right? We have to trust each other. You have to feel comfortable. We have to connect. Okay, so what's that akin to? What's that akin to? If you start putting your resumes and stuff into an applicant tracking system, that's about the same potency as me creating a website and not doing anything. Okay, but what do? I have to consistently get my stuff out there. Well, how do I do that? Tuesday digests, Thursday live office hour shows. I send you some beautiful emails, right? I write to you, I pour my heart out to you. I reach out to you, I build a relationship to you. Isn't that the job search challenge, where you're trying to build your relationships? This is what makes it work. You have to create the stuff, but we're going to get to what you got to create first in a second. I'm not just talking about resumes and stories. You can have all kinds of resumes and stories and still not get the job, right? But the consistency in bringing yourself to them has to happen. All right. So you need to recognize this. Everything I do, you do. Everything you do, I do. Same thing. My life is one big job search. Okay. So think about this. This has to happen for you to be successful. But I want you to understand that path of least resistance, like just shoving your resume in an applicant tracking system, isn't going to make it happen. And me popping up a website with a page that says buy my job search bootcamp isn't going to make it happen. It just isn't. It just isn't. None of you wrote me and said, oh, I went to the Mile Walk Academy. I saw there was a card there. I clicked it and I bought the program. Seemed like a good program. None of you did that, right? Your job search works the same exact way. Now, here's where it gets interesting. And here's where the problems start to come in. So I want you to understand this analogy, and I want you to think of things in this format. All right. Now, what happens is that this creation becomes an issue for some of you, because what you are going to create has to be consistent in two directions, okay? There is a level of continuity in your experience, the way you market it, okay? And then the stories you tell. So let's be really clear. There's some desk work that you do that you have to figure out, well, what are the stories that I want to tell, that I want to put out into this world that will attract employers when I, put my stuff in front of them, okay? So where do you get that? There's a career achievements journal. The career achievements journal is in your system. It's in the second module, and it talks about the 14 most important pieces of information that go with stories that give them power. What's analogous when I tell you a story? There was this woman, her name was. Here's what it looked like. She had this problem. She did these things. She ran into these challenges. She overcame them this way. She ended up getting a big time job and a big time salary and managed a big time, all that stuff. This is your career achievements journal. Okay, this is the kind of potency that you have to have to back your stories and your experience. It doesn't start with the resume. It starts with you reflecting and thinking back to the data. Okay, but you want to choose the projects and the experience that you put on your resume, okay, based on where you ultimately want to go, who you want to discover you, the type of company you want to work for, the boss you want to target, or any of that stuff, market, industry, whatever, okay? So that when you get to the interview, they have already an understanding of you and your experience and can envision how you will help them. Now the interview theoretically becomes a formality of confirming their excitement that they got based on your marketing credentials, okay? So I need you to think about that. So here's what's happening. Some of you aren't taking the time to go through this part of the exercise. You're just going at what your history is, but not really looking at all the details of your history, or trying to remember, or trying to recollect, or at least take a good guess, okay? And try to get a good swag in there about what happened, what you accomplished, and so forth. Then when I look at your marketing material, the story you tell in the marketing material doesn't coincide with the stories you want to tell in the interviews. You say, well, I don't really want to be a one of those. I want to be a one of these. Well, your resume doesn't position you to be a one of those. Or if by some miracle of God, one of your connections got you in front of somebody who was going to ask you about this, the stories on the resume aren't going to match the stories you're going to tell in the interview. That makes it very difficult for the person to put your story together in their head. And these interview stories also have to be in direct alignment to what their problems are. What do I always say about when somebody asks you to tell me about yourself? You got 25 things you can tell me about. They're all awesome. I need you to tell me about these 2 things right here. How are you going to know that? Well, there's some planning you can do. There's some, right, in advance, a company like this is going to have these kind of problems. They're going to need these kind of people to solve these kind of issues. There's some on the fly assessing you can do. What's your biggest problem you're facing right now? What's your biggest challenge in the market? What's your biggest obstacle to growth? Like, you can be asking these in the interview as well. But the point I'm trying to make is your experience has to be packaged in a manner and presented on a resume or in a cover letter or your LinkedIn profile or your emails or whatever that will get you to an interview where the stories you tell are more augmentation of what's on your resume. If you are bouncing me around your resume to tell me things, that makes it more difficult. If you haven't controlled the narrative properly and you can't keep pointing to the top, meaning you should be pointing to the top of the resume more and more than, okay, over there in the second third of page 2, right? That's what I'm talking about. So I need you to step back and just look at your stuff. Look at your resume. Does your resume lay out and show and talk about the stories and the projects that are going to get you to where you want to go? If not, you have a lack of continuity. And then when you get into the interview, the greatest stories in the world, if they're not in sync with the resume that supports that, makes it very confusing for the person who's interviewing you. So my history, all the data and the teeth I need to populate my resume with the right stories that then leads me to the interview stories that I'm going to tell. That's what I mean. So when you go back and you look at consistency here, it's not just consistency in delivering that resume out, sending the networking messages out. It's the continuity too in the data that you use to populate the resume. You used to think about who you wanted to target because you knew you could solve those problems. I don't go and try to find people when they need job searching help. I don't look for people who have other problems than that, right? Same kind of thing when you're looking for companies. Now, you can look for different kind of, I'm a project manager. Well, there's a number of different things you can do. You can look for different companies, but I'm just saying, you gotta make sure that they have a problem, that they have projects that they need to run, projects that are broken that need to be fixed, or projects that need to be implemented for them to grow, or whatever it is. So does that make sense that you gotta step back? Is what I'm putting together going to lead me to where I wanna go? And then once I get there in that interview, is my storytelling going to coincide with my resume, points, bullets, narrative, career profile, highlights, everything that goes on there? That's what gives you power. That's what makes it easy when you walk in the door. You should be confirming for them, okay? You shouldn't be in an interview. You practically should just be confirming what they've read already, okay? So if you look at your stuff and it doesn't do that, even though you might be a great storyteller, even though you might have a great resume bullet, all that stuff has to work in harmony. And what I'm noticing is people's goals do not align with the way their resume is formatted or the way their resume is laid out or the stories that they're telling in their resume. Okay, so I really wanted to call your attention to this. Okay, that's the first part of this. So you can see when you start to think back and you look at across each of the kind of the major phases, the kind of the reflection, the first parts, where do I want to go? Either, where's my passion? What direction do I want to take this? Or any of that stuff. All of the things that you pull together from your thoughts to what goes on the resume to the stories you tell in the interviewing process. You want that to be consistent across. So what I want to do now is I didn't show you the rest of all of that. That was kind of a warm up to what I want to say to you here today is another way to think about how can you become more consistent across these areas and how to interpret this, how to think about it, and what questions to ask yourself. So ultimately what we're working toward, and I think I saw some questions in the chat about, how do I demonstrate what I'm passionate about or where I want to go. Some of that is implied on your part and needs to be inferred by the person who's receiving your paperwork, receiving your networking message, receiving your cover letter, or whatever it is. Some of it can be explicitly stated, but it should be explicitly stated and consistent with what your resume looks like and the stories you're about to tell. So I drew this. Do not ask me how many times it took me to actually draw this without scratching it and tearing it up. But remember, when you're going forward and you're going into an interview, the person who wins the job is the one who can articulate their fit and value that is most in alignment with what the organization needs in the immediate term and the near mid-term, right? Whose fit and value coincides with that? Where do you get that? From the interview intervention book, sorry, back there, right? I talk about that. One of the reasons, that's one of the 3 reasons why you get the job. But how do you do that most effectively? By being obsessed with what you think their problems are at the moment and knowing that you either have solved those or can solve those. Okay, if you are a college student and you don't have a lot of experience because you have not solved problems before, does not mean you cannot solve their problems because you have great organizational skills, analytical skills, other things that you've done that demonstrate the traits. So how do we look at this? Remember, Your resume is not a work history document. It is a marketing document, right? It doesn't matter as much about your history, although some of it does, so you can provide evidence that you've done certain things. It is about where you want to go. This is where you want to go. Your goals, your desire, your career path, the roles you're interested in, the company types you're interested in. Let's start there, okay? It's where you want to go, and then it's the intersection with where you want to go and what issues they have. You're looking for that intersection. So I want to go somewhere, and I want to be a great worker, and I want to get a job, and I want to live a happy career. But with what I want, the intersection between what I want and what they need, because they need somebody who can solve their problems, those have to intersect, as well as your solutions or your characteristics, traits, experiences, or whatever that solve their problems, have solved their problems, or have seen enough of them. Right? I go back to, right, I was talking to the boot campers in that session, and I was talking about, why did you hire me? Well, you also hired me in part, or you're sitting here, even if you haven't hired me, but you're part of my community, and if you're still listening to me after a half an hour of this, that you trust that I have developed solutions or have the experience to share with you valuable information that will help you overcome the challenges that you are facing in your job search. The intersection of all three of these things is a job offer with the right company, right? And both the job offer and the right company, we want both of those, right? We don't want a job offer from a company we don't like. I have a bunch of people who are getting jobs and started work in companies they don't like, okay? So all three of these things may not have happened. There may be some other things. But this is another way for us to look at what needs to be consistent and congruent in what we're doing. All right, so how do we get there? How do we get there? All right, so first thing is I use the word desk work, right? You got to think in advance, all right? So now, first thing is think about where you want to go, think about what you want to do, think about the kind of work you want to do. Now, think about organizations. What would their issues be? That organization. Would that organization have issues that I have solved? What problems have I solved or can I solve that they might have? Now, a lot of you experienced professionals are going to have a good idea of these things based on what the company does from a product and a service standpoint. Will tell you what issues they have. Do they develop a software product that helps organizations capture their customer information? Are they a data capturing company? Are they a whatever, right? Do you have experience with handling those kinds of issues? Because if you look at the job descriptions, if there is one, they're gonna tell you what experiences they're looking for, which is going to give you one step removed from what problems they're having. Okay, just do the desk work and be smart about the organizations that you're going to target. That's the first thing to help lead you to where you want to go. The second thing is then on the resume. When you take it to the resume, does my resume show that I've solved the kind of problems that I want to overcome or that company wants to overcome in the future? So from what I've done in the past, am I demonstrating what I can do? And is my demonstration of what I can do in alignment with what I want to do next? You know what? I've run big businesses. I've managed hundreds and actually thousands of people. I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm not going to be bragging all over my resume about how I've managed large programs, how I've done this or that. You follow me? This is what I mean. Just because you can doesn't mean you want to. Just because you can doesn't mean you want to. Okay? So if you're littering your resume with a whole bunch of accolades about stuff you don't want to do, then you have to look at the context upon which you've placed those on your resume. This is really important. Okay? So just ask yourself, does my resume show that I've solved the kind of problems that I want to help companies overcome in the future? This goes back to what? This circle. Is this where I want to go? Am I congruent with what I'm advertising as my desire, not my skill? Okay, so that's one way to look at it. And then you're looking for that intersection with what would their problems be, right? So what is their problem? So those two pieces of desk work and prepping your marketing material are looking for that portion of the intersection. We're not all the way there yet, okay? And then the next thing that you want to do is just think about, right? Same thing, an extension of what I just said. What are that company's problems? What are the issues they're likely facing? Do they need to sell more? Do they need to market more? Do they need to increase brand awareness? Right? Do they have complex accounting that needs to be taken into account because of whatever? Do they do a lot of mergers and acquisitions? Are they growing organically? Are they growing through acquisitions? What are they doing? Does my resume story solve those? Have I put it front and center and probably made them squeal with glee that once they saw my resume, they know I'm the person and they cannot wait to get me on the calendar, right? Okay, now, what's next? Well, you got more desk work because what? Your stories have to be consistent with what's on your resume. So now look at this. Do my project stories speak to the problems that I've solved and that they will have? So this goes from, is it where I want to go? Does my resume say I can? And then, are the projects that they're likely to ask me about in order? Is all that seamless? Why is this important? Have you heard me say before the ultimate resume? Well, first, okay, let's back up. The ultimate resume, your job when writing a resume is not to get them to read it. It is to get them to come to the decision that I need to speak to this person. The faster it gets them to say that to themselves, the better your resume is, period, end of story. Okay, now, when I see a resume and I say I need to speak to this person, if I came to that conclusion quickly, what was on the resume that likely made me draw the conclusion quickly? Projects and accomplishments that I saw that were in direct alignment to the experience that I need to get hired on this team so that that person can go fix my issues. Does your resume, number one, have those kinds of projects on it? And how do you know if it has those kind of projects on it? Because number one, you talk about the benefits that you attained by implementing this kind of project, right? I saved the company $10 million by streamlining the processes related to blah, blah. That blah, blah and those processes are likely the same things that customer, or sorry, that company that you're interviewing with or targeting needs. Okay, that's what's going to make them squeal with glee. So you want to make sure resume has the projects and accomplishments on it, and the interview stories that you are preparing from the desk work standpoint is doing that as well. And then we want to move on to some other things that I did not mention in the recording, but this one goes out to all, it goes out to everybody. It especially goes out to career changers. So other things that you can do from a static standpoint in the creation mode is you can write articles, opinion pieces, how-tos, states of the market, anything that you can start identifying, writing, blogging, and I don't mean you got to set up a full loaded blog. You can use LinkedIn and their long form posts or whatever, or you could have a portfolio or however you want to do it. Are you getting things that you have developed that are, again, consistent with the projects you've done? Are you a project manager that has created a hybrid methodology of, agile and blah, blah for the energy space for oil companies that do this kind of project? Somewhere, write a piece about that. Post a template out there on your LinkedIn profile. Attach the PDF and a link to the article or whatever. These are the kind of things that are also helping you establish yourself as knowledgeable. Don't have experience on it? Go read up on something, watch a YouTube video, read a blog, read a book, follow somebody, and then write your ideas on it. I've put videos out there in the world on how to create content to make it your own based on research you've done. So do these kind of things. This is another thing that you can do from the comfort of your own, Swiss ball, where you can just write away, meaning WRITE, write away, things that make you look knowledgeable. Don't worry, not everybody's going to read them. They're not going to read the whole thing, even if they do. It's just a stamp that you're giving yourself of approval that you have some understanding, if not a great understanding, of that solution, that industry, the current state of the market, whatever, okay? That's more development. And then there's dynamic stuff that you can do so that when you get into an interview, you've got their problems and your solutions. Now, you've thought about what their problems might be. You've written about what their problem solutions might be, right? But now you get into the interview, and what do? You ask them, what are the challenges you're facing? What are the biggest problems? What's the reason you haven't done this or that? What are the problems, if solved, that will catapult you forward to your wildest dreams, right? That kind of stuff. So this is the dynamic interaction that occurs during the interview that helps you get into this centerpiece right here. So let's think about it, right? There's some thinking in advance. There's some reflecting of your goals, where you want to go, what you've done, pulling it together, thinking about the companies you want to target, targeting the companies whose problems you know how to solve or feel you can solve or likely can solve or can figure out and explain to them in some persuasive manner how whatever you've done in your past can fix whatever it is that they need. All right, then you're putting that on the resume, you're getting those interviews, you're getting in the interviews, and you're eliciting confirmation, right? So your resume, right, to them should precede you and give them an idea of what you can do. The interview for them is a confirmation of what? Those points you've put down in the resume that are demonstrated what you can do and how you can solve their problems. What is the interview for you? Should be the confirmation of what? What problems you speculate based on the research you've done, the company you evaluated and the way you evaluated it, the job description and the skills that they were asking for and the person that they want to hire, and so on and so forth. And that can be done dynamically. Okay? This is what gets you one of these. And it's easier to do that when everything that precedes that interview is congruent. It also works for you too. You got to think about yourself, right? Am I targeting companies that I would like? Or am I just targeting a company because I see an opening? All right. So ultimately, this is what we're going for, right? What are my goals? And being very clear and explicit on those. What are likely their problems and what do they need? And then do my solutions. Have I thought about them? Advertise them appropriately, done everything I could to make myself look like an expert. Put that information on the resume. Go in and prepare interview stories based on the projects I've put on my resume that coincide to the problems that they need to overcome. Okay, this is where you want to be. This is what will get you interviews that go smoothly. This is what will get you job interviews that pay you what you deserve. But you got to do all that. So there's a level of congruence across your different activities. There's a level of consistency, which we're not, right, like the job search challenge, which we're not going into detail right now. But if you're in my boot camp or in the coaching program, you've got a whole 6 video product on that. And if you're not, there's a couple of videos on my YouTube channel where you can check that out. So that would be your next step after bringing all that congruence and preparing all that stuff and then bringing yourself to market with the consistency of the job search challenge. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. 45 minutes was my goal. 2 minutes under budget. Okay. All right. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm always looking for different ways to unlock you. Okay, so, and I'm always looking for different ways so that all the trainers that copy my stuff can't keep up.